Yes, Gauri ma'am, the event is live.
Right, right. Hi, hello. Hello and welcome to Dil Ki Baatein today. Um, as I mentioned last time, this time's theme is I have called it, I will read out the question, but I've called the theme How to Speak So That Seniors Listen and How to Listen So That Seniors Speak. I've borrowed this title really from a book on children, which is how to talk so that children listen and how to listen so that children talk. Now the question has come from a gentleman who is himself a senior and works with volunteers, training volunteers to visit seniors in the US, an Indian gentleman. I'm just reading the question. Sorry, my phone needs to go off. It says, Hello, Gauri ma'am. I'm a senior myself and work in the field training younger people to reach out to the senior community and provide support in the US. There are Indian as well as other nationality people in our outreach program. I'm trying to find ways for my volunteers to get the seniors who they visit to engage in conversations, not just about health and related issues, not just about. Sometimes I feel there is a connecting bridge missing in such conversations there. While the young people want to be kind and useful, they often find themselves unable to find topics on which to connect with the senior person. They end up just sitting in front of the TV together, is what they report. What would facilitate better hour long communication with seniors? These are seniors who are quite mentally alert and active, physically active. We just need to find the right note on which the volunteers can connect. They're also meant to motivate the seniors to try a few new things. Any tips from your side would be very useful. Thanks. Now, this is Madhav J has written. And I hope this sounds to me like something whose uh, some of the tips can come, we can crowdsource it, and people who are present or those who are watching on YouTube can put, because there are so many different ways and ideas to open conversations between seniors. And some of those are work and some of them are notions more than ideas which don't work. So let's see what some of the strategies to have conversations with seniors could be. uh, so sorry, yeah, one thing of course is about TV. If he's mentioned that some of the young people report that they end up just sitting in front of the television, which itself is not a bad thing. Maybe sometimes on some days, but maybe it should be done in a more intentional way, where you set up with the senior in a previous session about what they like to watch, what they would recommend that the junior watch with them, and to make it a more connected activity instead of just passing that 1 hour the person has put on the TV because it's their favorite, maybe it's their favorite program, or they are just used to blocking out people by putting on the TV, you know. So maybe it makes sense to pre-plan it and say, on so and so day I'm visiting, I'd love to see something that you recommend, where the young person is asking the senior person to recommend something. That could be, so again, to use that word, a kind of intentional pre-planned watching together is one of them, from which conversations could flow or not on that day, but it could be the material for conversations later. But I'm emphasizing that it's not to be done by default. It's just easier for the volunteer to just sit there. It's easier for the senior to not engage in conversation, and the TV is just going on, not in that kind of by default mode. So in a more intentional, planned way. I think one of the things that I would tell Madhav or anybody in this situation is, if possible, to clue the visitor in a little bit, give some background about that particular senior that they are visiting, so that the visit as well as the conversations, any questions, any conversation openers are not completely generic. If I know a little bit about that person, and how do I get to know that little bit? It's by uh, first time round, if somebody visits him, he keeps notes, goes back, and maybe there's a little, file or a dossier open on what that person is into, or what draws him or her out, so that other volunteers, when they go next time, go with some information to avoid that whole generic "to uncle kaise ho" kind of approach. uh, the um, other thing is that, of course, sitting face to face, together one on one, is important. But sometimes I would say you can shuffle into the plan where they're not necessarily sitting tete-a-tete, head to head talking, where each one is feeling a bit awkward and uh, what does it say? Sort of gives it a forced feeling that now we are sitting here and what am I going to say? So you could throw in some activity along which conversations could roll. It could be a little board game. It could be a small, since Madhav says most of them are fairly fit. Uh, it could be a little walk. Sometimes you'll find it easier to talk to somebody when you're just walking side by side with them, or standing in the garden looking at things and talking, instead of the first 1 hour of eye contact and awkward silences and looking away, looking here, looking there, what to say next. So while anybody would agree that you need to engage, one form of showing that you're engaged is, looking at somebody, that yes. But equally, whether that can be shuffled in with stuff where you're not just sitting looking at each other and wondering what to say next. That could be one thing. So, or something simple. If it's a person who wants to, again, you have to set it up. Would you show me how you make those very creamy scrambled eggs? Suppose the person says, I make the best scrambled eggs, and nobody makes them like me. One of the sessions could be teaching the older person, teaching the younger person to make something. It could be just to make a sharbat, or it could be the perfect way to get toast right without burning it. So I'm saying everything does not have to be only conversation based. Yes, conversations, but the conversation can be aided with activity is one thing that, and for this, there will have to be some sense of what that person likes to do. You can't suddenly say, chalo, teach me something to cook, to know if they're into it. Or if they're talking about gardens and the younger person knows a little bit, done some homework, asks names of things, asks about seasons, draws the person in based on what there is around, not just out of the air. It's very important to not have generic conversations. I think seniors, they may play along and answer the usual. It's like very small children. People are used to asking them generic things. नाम क्या है? कौन से क्लास में जाते हो? फेवरेट कलर कौन सा है? फेवरेट एनिमल कौन सा है? बहुत शैतानी करते हो क्या? This is the stuff that is very generic, and it, in a way, it's just passing the time and not really engaging person to person. The same thing applies in the senior category, where what younger people may think is the standard things to ask uh, questions. So questions is an important way to set a conversation rolling. But those questions also, see if you can get them to, before they go, sit and come up with, some questions that they would like to ask the person. And those questions cannot be so open-ended as, तो आपके ज़माने में कैसे रहता था? Which is too general and too open-ended. If you want to go into a nostalgia thing, want to know something about what it was like for that person, there has to be an effort made to customize it instead of being generic. So you could ask, uh, which has been your most favorite place to visit? Uh, which has been your proudest moment in your life? And these are just examples, but I'm saying as specific as that. Who were your best friends growing up? Are you in touch with any of them? What was your first job? That's an important thing to ask a senior. That's an interesting thing. They'll always have something to say. These kind of, again, very customized, to which the answers can't be general. The answers can't be, हाँ ठीक है, हाँ ऐसे ही रहता था. Yes, it was all right. There has to be very engaged answers if the person. Um, Now, of course, all of us seniors like to be asked about what our life has been about. But let's not get trapped into turning the whole conversation. Life for a senior is not always all about nostalgia. Nostalgia is part of it. There is the here and now, right, that we are living. Uh, we're not, I like to use this phrase, we're not extras in a film. अच्छा एक 5-6 senior log are in the background. We're not extras. We're leading life as it is opening out to us even now. So the part of the questions could also be things like, what are you looking forward to for this weekend? Here and now. Here and now questions. Who are you meeting this week? Or, who did you meet last week? Whose company you enjoyed? Or what did you do last week which you feel you'd like to do more of? And is there some way I can help you with that? These are openers. These are conversation openers. How's your book club going? So to be particular and not generic in the way you start moving a conversation with a senior. Um, Important to pace your questions. So uh, yes, ask questions, but to pace them so that the senior involved is not overwhelmed. Don't just, it should not turn into a sort of interrogation. So your volunteer has to remember to listen to the answer and not be in a hurry to apply the next question. Okay, I plan to ask this person 10 questions. Abhi ye ho gaya. And, you start checking your phone or you do other things, you fidget while they are just delivering themselves of the answer. That is not a way to listen or to elicit participation. And I'm assuming that these visits are part of helping the community, the senior community that he's working with, to help them to remain socially fit. We talk about being mentally fit, emotionally fit, and physically fit for seniors, but to remain socially fit. And part of remaining socially fit is not just be in a bubble of back in the old days nostalgia, not just that. Of course, it's a lovely, lovely place to visit for all older people. So the pacing is important. To be comfortable with silences is also important. To allow for silences, the person may say something, go quiet, maybe not a very talkative person, to be at ease with silences. And it's likely that the person, when they realize that it's not awkward, that they don't have to just keep coming up with something to say, may actually come up with more things to say, where they feel that the volunteer is also comfortable with silences. Um, and it also helps people to have the time to marshal their thoughts. You've asked a question, and maybe the person is putting it together, the thoughts. In the same vein, it's important not to jump topics too much. If the person says, "Oh, I was in the railways," and in, instead of jumping into which railway, Southern Railway, Western Railway, Eastern Railway, which ones was it, which city, let him start telling. And receive the information as not as encyclopedic knowledge, but as conversation, as beginning to understand the person in front of you. So it's best not to. This is an opportunity for the younger volunteer to practice active intentional listening, so that people don't plan their response or follow-up question as the person speaks. Next, I'll ask him this. Next, I'll ask him that. You know, it's important, without appearing to be staring or looking too hard at the person. It's important for the volunteer to learn to pick up on body language, facial expressions. Is the person happy to talk about it? Is the person relaxed? Or are they feeling now that they're at some interview and they must say all the right things? It's important for the volunteer to observe these things for themselves, so that each time there's a visit, um, you yourself also improve on your forms and ways of engagement with the senior person. It's sometimes the questions you ask, the person may find it difficult to understand. Why? Not necessarily because there is a comprehension or a hearing problem, not necessarily, but especially if the volunteer is a whole 2 generations younger. Sometimes younger people speak much faster than the senior person is used to, or they speak what in Marathi we call tonnatla tonnat, mumbling. There is a different way of talking between generations. There is. So an important thing is to, anyway, thumb rule is to slightly slow down how you address questions. Don't pack them with a lot of things that the person has to address. And actually, how you deliver the question also can be slow, with, of course, one very big caveat is that one should never be very careful to not talk down to the person as if he's a very small child. And this is a problem. At one time, I used to volunteer at KM Hospital in Bombay in the geriatric ward. And I noticed that the younger interns were, first of all, unnecessarily talking very loudly, very slowly and very loudly. The assumption is that the person can't hear, which is either it makes a person who's perfectly all right with what they are hearing, either kind of confuses them or really puts them off because they feel that they're being talked down to. So, even if the person is hard of hearing, find a way where you'll go a little closer and ask instead of putting your face in that person's face and, say it all very loudly. Some older people have got used to not lip reading, but find it easier to understand you if you're directly looking at them. So here it's important maybe to be face to face at times. If you catch on that, if you look that side and ask them something and they're not catching on, then while you may break that intense and excessive face to face, when you're actually asking something, see that the person can fully see you, see your lips moving. This is one thing. Now, this is all sounding as if it's going to be a very mannered, or जैसे कि एक कोई नाटक, like a skit बिठा रहे, how to talk to an adult. I don't mean it like that at all. It's just to keep some of these things at the back of your mind, that when you're talking to a senior, some of these things can be just kept up at the back of your mind. Often older people who you're visiting, who your volunteers are visiting, a lot of seniors feel that their autonomy and independence is slowly going. All of us feel it, maybe. Dependence on somebody else, or your world has shrunk because you don't go out that much more. Keep all this, others are making decisions for you, some important decisions for you. So in that 1 hour that you're spending with your volunteers, spending with them, maybe you can seed in ways where the older person decides small things, whether, should we do this or should we do that today? Instead of you coming in with, okay, today we are going to play a mental game. Today we are going to do puzzles. Today we are going to play Ludo. Bring a few choices and let the person get some sense of being a little bit in the driver's seat back. Um, and here is, it's not just strategy. That means you train younger people um, to genuinely be interested, not to find a join the dots way of appearing interested. That's not the point here, right? Uh, some amount of there may be some amount of cognitive decline, and without meaning to do it, the other caregivers might be taking a lot of decision making and all out of the person's hands, which is also one of the things that depresses and saddens older people. This does not mean we tell them, come on, you make me a cup of tea. I know you'll be able to light the gas. Suppose they can't, or they've been stopped to doing it. Or that's not a place where you would push the challenge. But in smaller things where the person gets to decide. If you have taken a bunch of flowers for the person, ask them to choose what vase, ask them to put it in front of them, ask them to make the arrangement. All these things matter in it being a firstly non-generic interaction, and an interaction in which the older person feels consulted instead of just various kind acts being applied to them, right? Uh, discussing food, what if there is a choice, if you come at a meal time where part of your activity is to take out the food and warm it and put it on a plate, if it is, or even if you're serving yourself a snack, the senior person says, look, I got this and kept for you, will you have it? All of these are opportunities to chat and talk. Where did you get it from? Where are these plates from? Are they very old? Are they new? Um, how did you know I like cupcakes? Stuff like this, but from a genuine place, not just like we know. Children know when you are just talking for the sake of talking. Children know, and you'll see that children as well as seniors will warm to a person who's genuinely interested in them and is not playing along, is not playing a role. Uh, about their life. Many older adults love to share stories about their lives. Uh, you know, they may be, you may hear them again. You may have heard it earlier. Uh, sometimes one can play along, but sometimes you can say, "Oh, that story about the time you told your boss, to go take a hike. I've heard that one from you. Tell me another thing in your office, how you were terror in your office. Suppose I'm just giving an example. So also to not slide into the person bringing out their well-worn stories. Make them mind their mind a little bit for more examples of what they're telling you. This is another important uh, non-generic way of conversing. Uh, One very important thing is to not you must train your younger people to not get into, in we are nowadays in such a complicated and divided world, not get into what we call funda conversations about politics, racism. Maybe the person says things, but it's not the younger person's job to set them right on things, whether it's gender issues, um, whether it is patriarchy, chauvinism, anything, class issues, uh, our current leaders. Of course, the person has a right to have an opinion, and so does the younger person. But this is not the place, I feel. You would be careful not to feel No, I'll set you right on this. ऐसे नहीं है, वैसा है, आपको नहीं मालूम ये. It's overwhelming. Uh, at the pinch, you don't have to pretend to agree with everything. At a pinch, you could say, I see it a little differently, but not. Um, it takes some amount of maturity to get into a conversation, into a debating mode with a senior person who's very fixed on something. You have to be very mature to be able to indulge in that conversation and not start sounding very combative and militant with that person. It's not a visiting person's uh, mandate to get into that. So, you may have different opinions on lifestyle choices, social choices. Um, these are people who have grown up in a completely different era. Their idea of what is fun, what is humor, may be a little different from yours. I mean, unless there is something which is outright offensive, even that it is important to sort of dismantle rather than take head on. If you start a conflict like that, it can make a person feel even more either angry and irrelevant or isolated. So sometimes you may find something you talk about it, it could be a sports team, and then you end up agreeing to disagree. At best, it's you can agree to disagree on something if you have gone into a conversation like that. Um, and like I said, slower speech is easier for seniors to understand. But remember that you don't have to use child-like language. Not, no, I mean, to use a strong word, infantile language. Even infants don't like infantile language, actually. So with a senior, definitely not. That is not a definition of being kind and compassionate. Talking to them as if they are very like they're small children. So it's important to train volunteers to be in conversational mode and not in, I have come here to do some big compassionate job. Then you won't, if you're in just conversational mode, you will automatically not be patronizing or talking down to the senior. Um, like I said, sometimes people talk very loudly or in a higher pitch voice, and which it makes it just more difficult actually for many seniors to hear what's going on because they are watching you. I would also say be careful about physically standing over somebody and talking. Be at the same level. That is also a bit overwhelming for a person sitting in a chair or maybe a wheelchair or in bed. So I don't know if you all have noticed that nowadays even waiters are being trained to not come and take their order looking down on you. They'll come and, especially in Western countries, they'll crouch at your table, crouch at your level, even smaller, to talk. It is a more modern version of uh, not of good manners, but also to put the person at ease. Uh, you could consider changing the venue once in a while. If the person is very comfortable or their caregiver, their son, daughter, whoever has instructed you to not take them out from there, that's different. But if the person has their own decisions on that, you could consider one day meeting in a coffee shop or going down the road somewhere, sitting on a park bench, um, you know, walking in a mall with them if they want an outing, just walking the mall. So changes of venue, very judiciously done, well thought out, not on the spur of the moment, and also by asking that, today I have my car, do you want to go for a drive? We could go for a drive. Again, then you're side by side and you can still be chatting. Uh, it's important to reduce distractions. Um, seniors are sensitive to sounds much more than younger adults. So a lot of background noise, TV भी on है, कहीं पे और भी on है, phone भी, you are talking to somebody while that person is eating. Keep those, too much stimuli can be very challenging. Too much stimuli. Music be on hai. Try and reduce it to one or two. If the person has some music going, you can ask if the volume can come down if you're talking. Or then again, like I said about the TV thing, intentional. Oh, you're listening to so and so thing. Oh, I'd like to hear a little about this. Tell me a little about this piece of music. Then it's intentional. You're listening to the music and you are, it's not just background noise. Uh, Laughter and humor is one thing. That is it's one of the tools that you must have. You could draw the person in to tell you something funny, or the person automatically says something funny. You take it up from there to keep actual laughter as well as lightheartedness as part of the interaction. Now, some people are very good at it very automatically. Some volunteers, some may need to hone their skills, but they need to be told that it's an important tool in your interaction with a senior person. Laughter. Um, Short, not complicated jokes, not very long ones. If you are telling, um, you have to run them past in your head whether the context is understandable to this person. So possibly it's more useful for the volunteer to get a sense of the person, get illicit humor, jokes from the person themselves. When we're talking about the kind of questions to ask, what was your most embarrassing moment in your life? Bound to be something that will give rise to a funny story of some sort. Uh, mm, of course, not, I mean, the jokes have to not be at the person's expense, or the jokes cannot be, uh, jokes about, from your side at least, about seniors or the mistakes seniors make. It should not be that kind of thing. So you're not laughing at their expense. You're not, they are not part of the joke. So, you know, uh, the other thing I felt technology is, if the person doesn't mind, if you ask them to sing or to tell a joke or tell you a recipe, you could ask them to whether you can make a small little reel of it, just for something that for them to have, not necessarily to put up here and there. That involves taking permissions. And the other thing is some amount of, if the person is willing, some amount of helping them with technology. Not just to get something right, but to use technology in a fun way that they may enjoy using, like themselves making small reels, say an example, or taking good photographs of something that they have cooked or they want to cook. Uh, it's another form of recording devices, something that they can use. Maybe not filming, maybe talking into something. Um, Equally, one last thing, equally important to encourage the older person to ask questions back, so that again brings them into the here and now. If they can find ways of telling a little about themselves, the volunteer, whatever. Today I had a hard day, the buses were full. But then I thought of this and I decided to come from that route. Some mundane part of your own life, or something maybe slightly even more serious. I'm going to sit for the police entrance exam. And so you're volunteering pieces of your life to the other person. Also a way for that person to feel more socially fit, because then they have to have a response. They have to have a response to what this young person is currently occupied or preoccupied with, right? that was, that is part of it. The person may give you what you think is uncalled for advice. Important to absorb it. If the person is like this, the older person says, but why are you doing that? Why don't you do this instead? There may be an idea there, or it may just be part of the conversation. And again, a red flag is don't get into arguments in proving your point. There's no point to be proved with somebody who you're visiting, who needs social interaction, and you are the one of the channels through which social interaction is coming. But to judiciously get to know the person and let the person know you too. Now, in this volunteering system, maybe you will not go back to that same person each time, but it's still important because it becomes for the senior as if a bit of the outer world has come and visited him or her. You get to know, अच्छा ऐसे भी होता है, ये भी एक career है. I see. Didn't know that. Something as simple as that. Or this is one of your fears. Or I see your father is telling you to do this, but you prefer that. Let them know what's going on in your life as much as you are, of course. You of course feel comfortable in sharing, but then it becomes more two-way instead of just top to down. From top, here I am. I've come with a gift of 1 hour for you. Take my gift, use it well. Bye bye. Rather than that, a much more inclusive and real world like, more like how the real world functions, a real world like interaction. Uh, is there any point I've missed? Let me just look. Yeah. Yes, that was it. That was it. So this is broadly what I would suggest. These are the things which can you shuffle into the system. The quick recap is maybe questions is a good way to start, but not generic, very specific to the person. Sharing, asking about the person's life, telling about your life too. Asking about the person's past life in the sense the life that he has led so far, she has led so far, but equally asking about today, here and now. What is preoccupying them today? What are they looking forward to today? Because nobody wants to feel like a museum piece. No senior wants to feel like a museum piece. कोई आ रहा है और देख रहा है like some, as if you are some relic from some other era. Nobody wants to feel that. So important to keep the conversation dynamic in terms of time frames, in terms of content, in terms of memories, as well as active here and now plans and decisions. Yeah. One last thing. If the volunteer is coming for the first time to a person, let him find or her find subtle ways to make sure that the older person is understanding them without saying कर लो ना, समझ में आया ना मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ, instead of that, but to get a sense of whether the person is getting what you're saying. You'll find different ways, like we said, it's body language expressions which will tell you whether you need to slow down, whether what you're suggesting has, say, 3 choices. Today, should we watch TV, play Scrabble, or just chit chat? Whether the person has understood that you're giving these as options. Important to tune in for the younger person to know how to tune in and get a sense of whether they are being understood fully. That's my one last point on this. Okay, that's about it. And I thought it was interesting that Madhav is training a small band of people for this and wants to not just leave it to, okay, one young body human is going and sitting with one old body and that's the work done. He's also trying to make it much more nuanced, pointed, and intentional, make the visits count better. So I congratulate him on that too. Anyone has anything to say on this? Do any of you feel? I do. I must say that I do feel sometimes that if I'm with a slightly younger set, not even a lot younger, people in their late 40s, early 50s, I sometimes feel that I miss contexts of what's going on. And I may later ask a closer friend, what was that about? I didn't know that thing. So you do sometimes feel that a little get together or a party or a little outing, and that's okay too. So you won't get all parts of it. You won't understand fully all parts of it. And I think inter-age interactions are very important for us all. And that's why this is a lovely initiative. He's getting younger people in, not only as social work, as they call it, but just it benefits both. It benefits both. The more intergenerational interactions there are, the more natural and real the world becomes for both. It's important not to feel, there's a question about that too, which I'll tell you about later, that some people, younger people feel that सीनियर्स के साथ बात क्या करे, या तो वो लोग पास्ट ग्लोरी के बोल रहे हैं, they're talking about all the great things they did, or they're putting down this current zamana, saying, and this is bekar, that is bekar, our zamana was the best, or they're showing off about their children's achievement. There is this feeling, and we'll talk about that later. There's a question to do with that also later for another session. So it's important that these kind of interactions take away the generic impressions about each other. ये ना senior लोग ऐसे ही होते हैं, ये ना youngsters ऐसे ही होते हैं. The less we have of that and the more we have of actual one-on-one interactions, it's just it's a recipe for social fitness in all age groups. Okay, if does anybody have anything to say? Yeah, Sunita, are you putting your hand up?
Yeah.
Huh.
Usually we talk about health issues, no?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
about aches and pains and.
Correct.
So, what is a good way to talk about that? Like, you can't when you're speaking. I know I'm a senior and I'm going to get there quite fast with all the aches and pains, but generally, how would we talk about that?
To a person senior to
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Or
Yes.
even if you are talking to a younger person,
Yes.
when you're asked, how are you? It's important to not immediately list what's wrong. And I
What's
think
wrong?
those should be kept for interactions with actual health, people who've come to you about your health.
Mm-hmm.
One doesn't have to completely ban the topic when you're talking to an older person, but find a way to limit it. And, sadly, sometimes I feel older people feel obliged to tell you all this because nobody has bothered to talk about other things with them. And this is, it is a tough time. If you're aging with aches and pains and disabilities, it is a tough time. If you're visiting a person like this, to try and pull the conversation back into other things also. Maybe give it its full thing in your mind, let them talk about. But if you feel they're again going over the same thing again back to the health, not to brush it off, not to give them a dose of positive thinking, which just shuts up people. None of that. But to listen to it and in your mind have a time frame. See, you'll find some older people who will actually say, yeah, this has happened, that has happened, but never mind all that. You tell me what's happening with you. They are self editing also. They've also decided that I should only spend this much time on my health talking to this person. Let's talk other things. Those are the easier ones to connect with, because they're not invested in only talking about their health, you know. But if you go to somebody who you feel is really only talking about, yeah, when I said people are either showing off or cribbing,
Mm.
you know, the cribbing could be about health, it could be about changed times,
Mm. Mm.
or family, or their disappointments.
Yeah.
There's to be an, you know, I'm using this word quite deliberately, and it's sort of an artistic way to draw the person away from just keeping on talking about that thing,
Mhm.
you know. So
Mm.
one can't say, unless
Yeah.
you're close to the person, you can't say, okay, now enough about your health, let's talk something nice. Not like that, not like
Mm.
that. Because it's a legit thing talking about your health.
Mm.
So,
True. Mhm.
yeah. And you also, as a person who's receiving this information, if you're visiting an older person, you must also feel free to bring them up to scratch about what's happening with you too. Suppose you
Mm.
say, I had nasty fall yesterday, my nail came off, but now I'm managing. You know, you're giving in, but you're giving finite, you're giving out the vibes, we are exchanging physical well-being news, but
Big.
there's going to be other stuff. This is only, this hour is, this part of the hour is for this, then there's other
Mm.
stuff. But then the
Yeah.
onus is on you to come up with the other stuff, just like what Madhav is asking. The onus is
Mm.
on people going into uh, draw people out of their comfort zone sometimes, where the comfort zone may be just TV loudly put on, or talk about what's wrong with yourself and this world, you know.
Mm. Mm.
To be given legitimate space, not to be brushed. As I said, it's very
Mm.
isolating for an older person to just keep on hearing a positive socho, up, positive socho. It's like telling, it's a polite way of saying, just shut up,
Mm.
you know. So, yes, the power of positive thinking, but it can't just be used as a big fat, tape the mouth shut by saying this to them. There
Mm.
are ways
Mm.
of drawing them into positive conversations, not just saying talk positive. That is the point of even, I
Yeah.
think, the tips that Madhav wanted.
Mm. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, what is next week's theme? So we have quite a few things to talk about, but next week's theme, kind of on the same continuum, uh, that on this making, how to speak so that seniors feel free to chat. Uh, how do we, this theme for next week is, how do our seniors make sure that younger people we are dealing with, whether it's waiter, somebody in the bank, your next door neighbor, your grandchild or child, shopkeepers across the counter, salespeople in stores, uh, how to be understood and served better without having to raise your voice or repeat yourself. To find that thing, because the question that's come is to do with that, is of being a little unsure whether you're being heard. Are you being ignored deliberately, or is the person multitasking and that's why it's happening? So, how to find a way to be heard. Now, this is how to find a way to be heard and served without having to turn it into some kind of nasty confrontation. That's the theme for next week. To not to raise your voice or to repeat yourself. You wonder, has he heard? Has he not heard? Do I say this again? I think we all experience this. And the person is actually multitasking. So they've heard your request, but they haven't been able to acknowledge it to you. And so you don't quite know whether how to speak so that people listen now, people serving you in positions where they have to do something for you. Okay, and on that note, let's stop here. Yeah, Krish? It's 5.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, we can wrap it up, Abhi.
we'll wrap it up. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Thank
Okay,
Thank
you.
I'll see you
Everyone.
next week again. Yes, bye.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.